Okay, and we're taking our marching orders from our elder. We got Marie Olson, she talked with us that we just got to keep the program going. And so, as I think a number of the room has heard, Bert Adams was going to do a presentation, and sadly, he had a medical emergency. But what I know is he is recovering, and they should expect a full recovery. Let's just have our thoughts with Bert. However, something that has happened recently is I ran into John Morris and Sam Johnston, and they are directly related and opposites to each other. And they started talking and sharing and reminiscing their history. And so we're going to invite these fine, wonderful elder storytellers to share with us. John has history on Taku Kwan and grew up on the Taku. And I had a chance to listen to him, and it's just really some of the best storytelling I've ever heard. And same thing with Sam Johnston. You heard him at a number of times in this conference, and his fine oratory and speaking and knowledge of the Tlingit language and the people he upholds. So it's going to be very special to hear from our elders. And if I may invite John Morris here, and we'll be able to check in with Sam when we have an opportunity. And I'm following the lead of our precious elder, Marie, to just keep on track with the agenda. All right. John, if you could come up and if we could, well, maybe we'll get 2 chairs and have this nice and comfortable for y'all. And there is Sam, Anya Thahash. If you two fine elder gentlemen, if we get just chairs and just to hear from you, it'll just be special to have this opportunity to hear from you as elders with the stories and history that you'd like to share.
Good Chief, thank you. I was asked to step up and share some stories with you. I've been fortunate enough to be able to share the podium up here, the stage with Sam Johnston, who is a direct relative of mine. My great-grandfather was Chief Oniklahash from the Juneau Douglas area here back in the 1880s when gold was first discovered. And I'm fortunate enough to share the stage here with my cousin, a relative of mine from the Yukon, who shares that same name, Oniklahash. So I'm very honored and to be able to share a little time with him, and I'll turn the mic over for him right now. Thank you very much. Sam?
Thank you very much. It's really an honor to be amongst you people out here, especially a gathering like this. And I was at the first one when they had this gathering of the clans in Haines. So it's really an honor to still be part of it. And we're all working for the same cause of to keep our traditions, our language, and our customs going. So it'll stay with our younger people, our children, our grandchildren. Excuse. But it's like anything else. Like there's always time to be serious so that everyone could understand. But it's always nice to add a little humor to it too. So I have 2 stories that I tell you. The first one is about a lonely man and a seagull. A seagull, a lot of you Tlingit speakers, you know it's called Kate, could you please say it? Kate. Okay, I'll tell it in tonight, our Tlingit language, and I'll translate for myself. As the story goes, Tlokye yua Tlingit atna atchin. Tlingit asko yu ayah. Bukaltik ittachaya yu ayah to the kindakashu. Jagode atcha. Astokaide ashunakich. Itleika has to on there. Askokat nak. Legatia ka koetlis kedens to the nook. Yakodayaka. Kukin This ko ekhatul sini in khaguri. Jan koche gugen at khaka nak akhane gakhiu. You died a Ilhai kayad just atuto art on the gachtu art. Jan koe gushema setune. Yada koe kayad et ayana kuyawa ha. Yaka yanigo ansu. Kenak en kenal sin. Take a tea at koe the kanakanatin. Yenas tish. Eka yenas tish. Take a gay Jordan got here, good, here. I asked that do good. Jago there, just Kate lady to come the kin. After the 2 week yeah, had to say good. Oostini. Jayach came and lakin. Kate cow, she you. Kate. Oh, hammed your coat to the Yanat, Jogades hour. Is to on eat the dush. Ah, hey, Shukmana Hodo, ach, you yodel, you do a sagushi. Sling it, was the tish, sling it, either, some do. So now I tell you in English. A long time ago, the Tlingit people used to travel around a lot. One place they were living by a lake. It was springtime of the year, and all of a sudden they become aware we're running short of food. But we have to go back to this other campsite of ours where we'll have some more food. We'll bring some back here. But one man wasn't feeling very good. He was kind of sick. So he told them, go without me, because if I go with you, it's going to take a long time. So this really agreed, and they told him, we're just going to go, but we're going to come right back anyway. So okay, everything was okay, but when they left him, they were gone way longer than they expected. I don't know what happened. And this man that was there by himself, too, sure enough, he was getting better from the medicine they left with him. Getting stronger, but one thing was getting the best of him was loneliness. Very lonely. Nothing else alive beside himself. So one day, just out of loneliness, he didn't know what to do, so he went for a walk on the lake shore. And while he was out there, all of a sudden a seagull flew over him and just hovered there. He looked up at it, and he was so glad to see something else alive beside himself that he started singing. Keedle-dee, keedle-dee, keedle-dee. And these people too were just coming back, and they heard singing come from their camp. But this is the first time they ever heard yodeling. They learned that yodeling from a lonely Tlingit man. So I have another one to tell you. This one I'll just tell in English. Once there was a beautiful Tlingit princess, very beautiful. She wanted to get married very, very bad. But her trouble was she had 2 boyfriends. And her being a princess, a chief's daughter, she knows she can't have 2 husbands. She didn't know what to do, so one day she told her best friend about it. And her best friend told her, all you have to do is find an elderly woman, ask her for advice. She'll tell you what to do. So she went out to look and found an elderly woman. So she told the woman about her problems, that she wanted to get married, but she couldn't make her choice which man she was going to marry. So this old lady looked at her and says, yes, grandchild, I see you have a problem. But when you have a problem like this, all you have to do is give your 2 male friends a very hard assignment. The assignment I want you to give them, they have to come back with proof that they've killed this dangerous animal that has been bothering our people all this long. And one of those guys' names was Dark Cloud, the other one was Fallen Rock. And they both wanted to marry her too, very bad. So as soon as she told them what they had to do, boy, they just took off. Took off into the hills, to the mountains. Next thing, they were gone for days, weeks, months, maybe even years. Finally, only Dark Cloud showed up. No one ever know what happened to Fallen Rock, even to this date. This is why as you go from Skagway to Carcross, going through the mountains, you still see these signs posted on the road. Watch for Fallen Rock. So those are my stories. Thank you.
How do you follow that, huh? That was good. I'm Taku Kwan Yanyedi. I grew up on the Taku River till I was 15 years old. I probably knew no other place than the Taku River and Douglas Indian Village over on Douglas Island. I'd like to share some of those stories with you now. Growing up in the 1940s and 1950s and traveling to the Taku during the summer months, the whole Douglas Indian Village would, the Taku gillnet fleet was made up of riverboats because of the shallow river on the Taku. And we gill netted and set net on the Taku, and so we all had riverboats outboards. And all the houses in the Douglas Indian Village were built on pilings, and underneath the house is where we pull up our riverboats, turn them over and store them for the winter. And but in the springtime, like in the first week of May, we would pack up the whole Yanyedi clan, the fishing village, the fishing fleet would all travel to the Taku. And because we had riverboats, they were very shallow, and because we had to take all our belongings with us because we're going to spend the whole summer up there. We don't come back home to the Douglas Indian Village until almost the beginning of October. And so we spend a lot of time on the river. And because we had to load our boats up so much, it was slow traveling, going from the Douglas Indian Village all the way to the Taku River. It's a short distance. Now you can go do that in a couple hours. Back in the 1940s, it was an all-day trip. So we had to figure out, because our boats were so loaded, we had to load the boats up, and we go with the tide when the tide was going out. And then once we got around Point Salisbury, there's a beach up there called Cherokee Beach, and we would pull in there and wait for the tide to start coming in, so we would catch the tide going into the river to get up to our camp. Once we got up under the camp, we would set up some tents, and we had some cabins, put up our smokehouses, and get ready for the season. And back in the 1940s and 1950s, gill netting and set netting was open 24/7, all day round. Today, now we're lucky to get a few hours in every week just to go gill netting. We only have, I think, one gill netter that's still doing it, and that's the president of the Douglas Indian Association, Butch Leidy. Growing up on the Taku River has always hold a special place in my heart, because there was no radios, no television, no electricity, no nothing. You had firewood, you had to carry your water, so it was quite an experience. The Taku River provided everything for us. We hardly ever had to come to town for supplies, except maybe to get flour, sugar, coffee, and that stuff, because the river provided everything for us. All the salmon, moose, go moose hunting. And so it was a great part of my life. And after I had done with my service in the military, when I came back home, I found out that I couldn't go back to that way of life, of going gill netting or going fishing, because fishing permits had come into play. And when I went to apply for a license and all that, they wanted to know what my points were, and I had no idea what they were talking about, because the permit, you had to have 5 years of progressive fishing, so many hours, you had to have your fishing receipts and all that, which I didn't have, so I couldn't do that no more. And so I had to say goodbye to that kind of way of life, which I missed dearly. I got involved with the Douglas Indian Village, tribal, federally recognized tribe that's local here. And in the last 10 years or so, we have been conducting a lot of work. We do water quality testing on the Taku. We've done sediment sampling, shellfish sampling, marine debris cleanup, and so we've been as small an organization as we are, we have been conducting a lot of good work here. I get to travel to a lot of the communities in the Southeast. I'm with the Transboundary Commission, and so I got to take this story to a lot of our communities here in Southeast. And some of those communities are now doing the same kind of work, doing the water quality testing, shellfish sampling, and we see a lot of this kind of work being conducted all over Southeast, which is really great. And we have really great concerns with the mining that's going on across the border because of contamination. We also have great concerns over the tour ships that have been releasing gray water right in our harbors here locally, as well as other communities southeast. And so those are some really great concerns for all of us because it affects our way of life. It affects the our salmon returns. We haven't had much rainfall here in southeast this summer, and so our lakes are only 1/3 full. So some of our salmon returns haven't been coming back, and even if they do, they can't get into our river because of the low water. There's not enough water and not enough rainfall to be able to help them. So the Douglas Indian Association have been having great concerns with that, and we try to work with all our tribes. We work with other agencies, the Forest Service, Rivers Without Borders, and so we've our little organization, which I'm very proud of, has been really conducting a lot of good work. And I want to hear some more of Sam's stories, so I'm going to hand it back over to him. Sam?
She's,
Thank you. I was going to share another. Go ahead. You had a question?
yes, first of all, thank you for sharing your knowledge, and I appreciate you as elders being there. Saklan de u yadusak natasa hinku kahu achli clara shinkel daklasha keat hit goach. My name's Diana Johns, and I'm from Carcross, Yukon in Canada, from Carcross Tagish First Nation. I'm from the Ducklawitty clan, and some of us are here now. This is my first time attending this conference of clans, and I just thank everybody who's done all the hard work to put this together. I've been with my clan has put me to the task to be on our Constitution Review Committee, and there's a lot of questions that we need to look back at some things that happened in the past in order so that we can address it for today to go forward for our grandchildren tomorrow. And I know and I don't want to offend anybody, but one of the questions that I've been posed to find out is I've always heard about the Ducklawetties and the Yenyetis at one time being one unit, and then I've heard they were too big, and I've heard that there was issues, but there was a breakup, and I heard about them going under the ice, and I was just wondering. I feel like this is a good opportunity to actually hear from elders rather than bits and pieces here and there about it. So my question is, if you have anything, or if anybody has anything to speak to that. Goodness, cheese.
Thank you. I was asked by Ishmael to speak a little bit more on Anaklahosh and Chief Jimmy Fox, who was my grandfather, and he was part of the family that I'm talking about going up on the Taku River. And I guess I was kind of his favorite. I was one of the oldest of the children that was growing up. And on the Taku River, just up past the Taku Glacier, is a rock that's probably about 4 feet in diameter that in the 1930s or so, that he carved a face out on this rock, and that was his spot on the river to fish, the gill net, and nobody else could ever fish that particular spot. It was the bottleneck of the river where all the salmon had to go through, and that was his place on the river to fish. And I swear that nobody could ever fish that place. But this rock I'm telling you about, whenever we went there to pick berries, he would have me come and sit with him on that rock. And he would tell me that someday I would be the carver in the family, that I would become the leader in the family. And I used to catch a lot of heck from all the other kids in the family because they said John's grandpa's favorite, so he doesn't have to go pick berries with all the rest of us. But I wanted to be able to go pick berries with the rest of them. But I got to sit on that rock with him and listen to a lot of the stories that he told growing up on the Taku River. The question that was asked by one of our audience here was about some of the history on the Taku. Right above the Taku Glacier was a couple of spears that were rolled way up. And there's a story of two giants that did battle. And the story is there's a couple versions of that. It was two brothers, but it was two giants that did battle. And on the river, right above the Taku Glacier, were places that were evident of this battle that took place. That the one giant had killed the other one, and even his heart was in on the river, and as the river came down, you could see different parts of the veins of the innards from the giant. And if you ever flew over in an airplane or so, and back in 1940s and 50s, you know, there was no such thing or being able to see this, and how they were able to figure out how all this story fit together. Being involved with DIA and Gold Belt Heritage, working together, we were able to put together in 10 years ago, I think, or so, the Juneau School in Douglas, they were doing some remodeling of the school, and the school, built in 1957, I believe, I'm not sure of that date, but it was built over a graveyard. That was a lot of the Takuquan, Yaneti, and folks were buried there. But they uncovered some of the graves there, and so DIA was involved pretty heavily with this, along with the Gold Belt Heritage. I sat on the board with them there for a little bit, and we were able to put together a program to be able to put a memorial up in front of the school in honor of what had taken place. But we also were able to carve a couple totem poles, one that was erected right in front of the school over there. And the second totem pole was a Yaneti pole, a wolf pole, that is standing at the sandy beach in Douglas that faces the Taku River. And on that pole is the same story that I was sharing with you about the giants. Both are on that pole. It's the only wolf pole that's ever been carved and erected over in Douglas, so we're really very proud of that. There's a good story that goes with that pole about the Douglas Indian Association. The president and some of our staff got together and helped design that pole, which represents some of the Taku, the salmon swimming upstream, the wolf and the wolf pups, which is we're very proud of. In fact, I go over there every once in a while just to go take some pictures and make sure there's no vandalism to it. But that's some of the stories I wanted to share with you. When I was in the military in the 1960s, I came home in 1962, and in the 1940s, the Douglas Indian Association, because we didn't have a boat harbor, went to BIA and asked them to be able to put in a harbor for the fishing fleet for the Taku fishing fleet. And they came through with the funding, and they were going to put in the harbor over there. And in the funding was going to be enough funding for each and every family to relocate. But that when we traveled to the Taku in the month of May, we don't come back till October. In those months, the city of Douglas knew where we were, that we were on the river fishing and making our livelihood. And so in the bylaws of the city of Douglas said that if any dwelling was unoccupied for more than 30 days, it could be considered condemned. So while we were on the Taku River, they went to each and every house, and there were 20 homes over in the Douglas Indian Village. And they went to each and every home there and tacked on a notice that said, this dwelling had not been occupied more than 30 days, and so they condemned it, and they put notices on, and then one by one, they started burning all of them. I came home on leave from the military in 1962, and I was there present with my two brothers, my uncle, when they burnt my house. We knew that they were going to burn the house, and so we left everything in the house, thinking that if they knew that we hadn't moved any or packed up any of our belongings and had moved out, that they might give us a few extra days. But they went ahead and burned it anyway. I had many, many bad feelings, and I used to carry a chip on my shoulder over that for many years. And it was a burden to me to be able to live that way. And a few years back, I finally decided it was necessary for me to let it go, forgive and let it go, because I couldn't carry that burden with me no more. And so that's what I did. And it had done me well to be able to forgive. And you don't forget, but you can forgive. And that was a lesson for me in my life that was really necessary. But I wanted to share some of that history with you of the Yenyedi people and how we had survived all this with the capital city growing up around us. We just got kind of lost in the whole shuffle here. But we shared a lot of this history with the Okwan, that back in the 1940s, we were one and the same, and sometimes we still feel that way. And so we reach out to the Okwan every chance we get to, and try to work together. But that's the story I wanted to be able to share with you today. Some of the history of growing up in this region here, and especially the Taku River, which I get up there about once a year, and for doing water quality testing, or just going up and looking at the land. And a couple of years ago, I was going up with the Forest Service, and as we went around the corner of Salisbury going into the Taku, one of the Forest Service members got up and said, "John," she said, we want you to show us all the sacred sites that you know on the Taku." And I turned around and I answered. I said, "This whole place is sacred. This whole place is sacred to me." So it's, I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you very much. Goodness sheesh. I'll see if Sam has some more stories to share with us.
I just want to say a little bit about Jimmy Fox and also Anas Lahash. Anas Lahash was one of the first ones that was leader of the Ishkitan. In fact, I think he was one of the founders of it after they separated from Yakutat. As the story goes, they're the ones that started over in Tluckon. But they always had a leader, like where that Ishkitan come from. The first clan house they built, the corner post was right into the water, where you can spear the fish right from home. And if I had my blanket, you'd see these two human figures on the back of it. One with the spear and the other one with the... But anyway, Anas Lahash was a very well-known leader out here, all up and down the coast. And like when the news of his passing came inland, my grandmother was very, very saddened with that for when he passed on. And so when I was born, my grandmother is the one that delivered me, and she announced it right there and then, Anas Lahash has come back. This boy will be our leader one day. How true that is. That was, to tell you the truth, you people, that's 83 years ago. In November, it'll be 84, so it's carrying on. But mind you, when you're given an old name like that, you have to try to live up to that name, because it's very famous. You know, Whiteman system, they say you got to try to fill their shoes, but in Tlingit, they say you got to fill that moccasin. So sometimes it's hard to follow, but boy, you have to do it. And also, well, Jimmy Fox, that was our grandma's brother. His Tlingit name was Weha. He come back inland to visit us way back in 1943. So we have a lot of good memories, and it's nice to come back out here where all our people originated from. But I sure wouldn't mind to go back where like our people separated from is Yakutat. And our really bunch is the Kanaktedi. And the only one that, like people used to all live together like we hear about. But this is why, after a while, it's so many separations. Naturally, being human, you know, everybody, there's going to be some differences. The only way that I can explain that to some people that don't understand is, like we're all living together, and I usually put myself in there and says, well, as soon as somebody looking at me and says, Sam, what are you doing looking at my wife like that? What's your intention? I hear that too many times, so I start packing up. And then somebody said, "Where you going, Sam?" "I'm getting out of here." "Well, if you're gonna go, I'll go too." Next thing, there was a whole bunch that took off. And this is when they come out and cluck on. Without, I guess, realizing that Haynes is just down here. But anyway, this is where, as near as I can tell you people about it, where we come from. So thank you very much for having me up here to speak to you, and it's an honor to be among you people. Gonna cheese. Cheese. Oh-ho.
We have a question back here.
My name is Henry Stevens. I was born in Talkerville, 1934. I was raised in Douglas. And I lived there. I went to Kodiak and came back. There was no more Douglas. It was burned down in 1962 illegally. It is also against the Constitution of the United States to burn an Indian village without the permission of Congress. What we have to do is get the legislature, get them backed up. I put the price on as about $300 million, plus about 80 years of interest. The city burned down Douglas Indian Village based on city council members, city law. And then they turned to state law. Even the United States itself cannot do that. Congress itself has to do it. It's that simple. I was studying law on my own for 25 years. I had a hard time, but if you learn, you can't stop. I got the minutes of Douglas Council minutes and how the procedures they did under state law, and I got the law federal law that nobody can stand up against. I got laws about Indian village in the entire United States, but nobody knows about it. I mean, that's Indians. You gotta read and enjoy it. I'm 85, I have cancer. I never minded anything. I keep on saying that if I die, he dies with me. I try to talk to other Indians, but I'm not a teacher. I'm a learner. So I've been fighting myself for 20 years. People hardly know that there were 3 villages here in Juneau. Thane. They were built under A.J. Mine. Douglas built right over Circle Mine. You're looking at big money. We never got a dime. They buried they built in front of houses that we lived in. I wasn't me, I'm talking about 1880s and that. When you burn a house down, it does not bother the land. Like I say, Congress itself will stand up for any Indian that it attains to, wherever he sits. This silly chair, all it has to do is short slip of paper. They are recognized. They are recognized in the village forever, only if Congress itself takes it. Who took away Juneau Indian Village? I got 3 court hearings concerning Juneau Indian Village. Fake. False. Thank you. Oh, questions.
You have a question too?
Oh, they asked me questions.
Oh, they asked you a question?
Any questions?
Response, does anybody?
Yeah, Andrea had.
Huh?
We've got a question up here.
No, okay.
Henry, I just wanted to acknowledge you, all your work. Wanted to acknowledge this elder for all of his work throughout the years. I've watched him decade after decade in frustration of legally researching everything, including the burning of the Douglas Indian Village, the loss of tribal land, water rights, fishing rights, and looking into congressional documents. He did all of this. And he would come to meetings with the tribe with stacks and stacks of papers, and he would present them not only to the Douglas Indian Association, but to the Sea Alaska Corporation, to Gold Belt Incorporated. And he would work day and night, and it saddens me really to hear his heartbreak as he battles cancer and age, that I wanted to acknowledge you as Tribal Administrator, Douglas Indian Association, for your labor of love. We, as a result of some of Henry's work, and this predates me as a Tribal Administrator, engaged the services of the American Indian Law Center and did a very extensive study on this historical trauma and the loss of land and the boat harbor, everything where Henry's birthright stem from. And the American Indian Law Center report, the author of that, the attorney, his name is Andrew Huff. And he concurred with everything that Henry is saying now. And there was a great deal of research that went along with this, where he's absolutely correct. The city of Douglas never had any jurisdiction. There was a trust responsibility between Congress and the federally recognized tribes, and that should have never happened. Just like the War Powers Act, they seized the waterfront of Juneau during the war, and they had the subport there, and they had the National Guard Armory there, now Jack, which may get millions of dollars. I'm not saying I'm for and against, but I'm trying to compare the before and after lens of the losses the Native community have experienced here. My husband, who's the president now of the Douglas Indian Association, put together testimony on the areas that Henry is referring to, including the Juneau Indian Village, and he went to Sitka to testify before the Department of Defense about the failure of the Department of Defense to return the waterfront rights to the Aquan and the Takuquan of this area. The jurisdiction of the tribes, some people think that Juneau Indian Village, where we're standing, only went from everybody knows the old teenage club, right? Okay. Just over here was the old teenage club where the Yaak Tribe Council building is, over to the tank farm. And and up, as Henry said. And they felt that that was it. That was the Indian village. Not true. Just look on your program. It's banned the waterfront. That was the Indian village. And their rights were to mean low water as far as the tide goes out. But the federal government, through Department of Defense, failed to return now, which is mental health trust land. And I believe it's one of the cruise lines bid top dollar for mental health trust lands. I think there was there was a $20 million minimum bid. And of course the cruise lines could afford to get that. Should have been returned to the tribe, to the people. That is the type of social injustice we continue to experience. And I just wanted to tell Henry, your words all these years haven't fallen on deaf ears. And you're responsible, for all of your fights and research. You have a large gratitude from the Douglas Indian Association for your part in the American Indian Law Center report, because that report consolidated all of what Henry has stood to talk about, year after year, meeting after meeting, just begging somebody to hear him. But you know what happened? DIA became landless. Corporations have instead oversee ANCSA lands. Tribes really don't have a say-so on what's going to happen on the ANCSA lands that were a result of the lawsuit, the Alaska Native Land Claims Settlement Act. And we don't have the deep pockets that Gold Belt has, that Sea Alaska has, that even Tlingit Haida Central Council has, to get that legal representation to sue the state of Alaska or the city or the federal government. But back to where Henry's coming from, that failure to uphold that trust responsibility to a federally recognized tribe. That's one of the injustices that happened here. So I didn't want Henry to sit back down and feel that in his aging and in his battle of cancer, that nobody has heard him. And I'm just so pleased, Henry, that you stood here. Well, some of us too are getting old. And I would be ashamed of myself if I didn't say anything to thank you. Kunik.
Well, I forgot a little bit. Everything that's happening, as you can see it, you're real close to what I'm trying to do. This is all Indian villages in Southeast is the same. Just like this village 5,000 years ago, Akwan sat here 5,000 years ago. And they don't realize we're just watching with a trial misinterpret all the laws I got. It seems like nobody wants to understand you. I don't have to get them taught. But I get mad sometimes. I don't know where I could start, but I would like to. The first thing we have to do is get a group of people. I'll take them up to Anchorage and talk to the people. We have to talk. The people are in Seattle, but the big boss lives in Anchorage. Her name is Lisa Makowska. She's the president of this group of legislators. That's the group. Only group in the United States can take something away from an Indian. The whole United States can't. Germany can't. I mean it. I used to have the law, but I think a lot of stuff away. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry, and I appreciate his acknowledgement of where we're meeting upon, because indeed it's an Aquan village, but I would be remiss too, not to again reiterate what I said yesterday. As tribal administrator for the Douglas Indian Association, I'm directly responsible to its tribal council. Our tribal council are, for the most part, descendants of both the Auk and the Taku Kwan. They coexisted. There's a map. There are historical accounts, and you'll see the area, the region of the Taku Kwan running parallel to that of the Auk Kwan. So it's not one trying to take over the other. It's a coexistence, too, that Henry speaks of, because he said he was born on the Taku River and the Douglas area. So he, in fact, is Taku Kwan.
I was born on Taku River, but my house is in Tlakwan. It's a bear house. Chief Kadena is my dad, our granddad, my mother's father.
Thank you. A good example of how our people traverse all over. But again, we all are like the salmon, we come back to our home territory. Kunishish. Thank you, Henry.
That was great. Kunishish, I know we got to move on, and I don't feel capable myself of acknowledging all of that history that's been shared. But I just want to say sincerely, that personal story of that atrocity of a village being burned and people being affected by that, and then people sharing their personal and their clan history, it's just a beautiful thing. So it's time to take a break right now and move on to the next session. But I just wanted to say, beautiful. Gunchish.